On this edition of the Table of Content, we are joined by Sean Reilly, one of our readers for WAOB Audio Theatre. We'll talk with him a little bit more about his background and what he hopes to do down the road. Stay tuned, that's all coming up next, right here on the Table of Content. Welcome to this edition of the Table of Content. I am your host, Albert Sine. So glad to have you joining us for this episode. And we are joined today by Sean Reilly. Sean, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Albert.
So, as I pretty much say almost verbatim for every show, Sean, we like to give our listeners a chance to hear more about the background of the volunteers. So I'd like to ask you, can you give us a little bit about your background, who you are, what you do, so that people can know who Sean Reilly is?
Before I came to the audio theater, I was graduating from Seton Hill University in December 2018, and this new discovery of We Are One Body Audio Theater. And one time I was doing an audition for The Barking Cat, and I can tell immediately that this is a wonderful opportunity for me to get a taste of voice acting and build it into a side hustle or just a dream job.
So let me jump in there, Sean. So I get the sense that voice acting is not something that you were doing prior to audio theater. Is that what you're saying?
I was looking for jobs in creative writing. But then, of course, one of my professors, Dennis Jers, is a professor of English, and I didn't really know that he was part of the audio theater. For a long time, I had classes with Mr. Jers, and I see he's a very clever person and, well, really dramatic, really eccentric, but a lot of compliments aren't always the same. But I feel voice acting is just it's so well connected that I meet somebody who I knew and see Mr. Jers as a friend and as a professor and as a member of the audio theater. It's well, it's kind of it's really wonderful connection.
Well, I can tell you, we love having Dennis involved with the audio theater productions. He is definitely such a creative-minded person. And even his whole family, we've had his whole family involved. So it's nice, like you said, kind of a small world to know that you've sort of joined. You find out that Dennis is involved. And we've had some other connections like that. People are starting to realize that they know someone else who is kind of potentially involved. Or what's been better is we've actually had volunteers be able to bring in other people that they know. So we've kind of been growing this audio theater family. So it's nice that you have your own built-in connection already through Dennis.
Yeah, and the people there, John Watechko, Gredlin Darkey, and Thomas Moranchak, they're very pleasant people to meet and to get acquainted with.
And I appreciate the compliment that you paid to Tom, Gredlin, and John. I think most people share that sentiment that it's just a great group of people to work with and to sort of soak up their creative minds and their good personalities.
Shortly before the coronavirus, I was auditioning for a poem, Crossing Brooklyn Ferry, and John Watechko, he always gives me directions that would that would seem like they're arduous directions, but I see them as just very helpful tips. And but even though some parts are just where I seem apprehensive, but it's hard work. But I keep paying attention to what's part of the poem or the script. And but then several months later, I was auditioning for G.K. Chesterton Father Brown and the Mystery of the Blue Cross, and that discovery had led me up to great engagement, and I start to meet a lot of people, and that experience had brought me so much, gives me so much gratitude, and uh, what I saw is Chris Paluzzi as Detective Valentine, uh, and John Walker as Father Brown, and I find he did a fabulous job, and the major roles are much more difficult, and and then I was the minor character, the waiter, which is in my comfort zone, and I thought I prefer minor characters best than than auditioning for big roles that they've got all the lines that I can't memorize off by heart.
You know, I was I'm listening to you, and you you mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned the having to take direction. You mentioned working with John and what seems like what might be kind of arduous requests, and having to sort of get it right, and you're working through it as you're reading it. You talk about working with these other actors like John Walker, who obviously sort of it's in their sort of DNA, if you will, to just sort of be able to pick up a script and read and memorize, but in spite of all of that, I think the point that I like that you were making is that it's work. You have to listen closely to your direction. You have to listen to what the director's saying. You have to really read the script. I think a lot of people might say, "Oh, well, it's just voice acting. You just have to stand behind a microphone and read your script and be done." And I think it's more complicated in some ways to be a voice actor because no one can really see your face. Now, the live Zoom productions aside, most of these other readings that we do for audio theater, no one ever sees your face. So you have to be able to give all of the intonation, all of the emotion, everything that the writer wanted. You have to be able to just do that with your voice only because no one can see you. So I, I,
Right.
I I agree with you. I think it is work, and it's not something you just sort of get up and do.
Yes, of course, and you know, and depending on that flexibility and the changes that the director can make, I can pay attention to very well, uh, and these directions are just they're just they're just kind of easygoing, and as uh, as most voice acting programs and other theater and film programs, they seem competitive, that they wanted to get this done. But with this program, I feel, for instance, it's very flexible.
Well, I think, with audio theater being a sort of Christ Christian backed organization, I think we come at it with a great
Mhm.
attitude of charity and patience and real true kind of love for the craft. We want really good quality, but we're interested in the person. We are interested in our volunteers. We care about our volunteers. So I think that comes through in the people that our volunteers encounter whenever they're doing a poem or a story or a production, and it really I think makes a huge difference in how people interact with the audio theater.
That's true. And then several months after that, um, I get an email from the audio theater that there is a production, The Nightmare of Prince Prezelsky, written by Kelsey McIntyre, and and so I got the part of the narrator, and that feels so wonderful. And so I've been studying the script so well, and I've been deeply connected.
What was your favorite part of actually getting to be the narrator for that story?
Well, for me as a narrator, I was really moved by the script and the characterizations of the attendants, the prince, and and the craftiness of the narrator. And Kelsey McIntyre is a really prolific writer, and I was able to emulate a calming presence as I narrate through that story.
Well, Sean, let's get out the last question here before we have to wrap up the show. So you've done a little bit. You're kind of excited. You got this Nightmare of Prince Prezelsky, wrapped and done. What do you hope to do down the road with audio theater?
Well, I just hope that in the near future that if there are some live productions, I'll be able to audition for one again, or just see about driving down to the audio theater for some other events, like the baking contest, which is always fun.
Well, I can tell you there's going to be no shortage of stories, poems, or even live productions for you to audition for, or anyone for that matter who wants to audition. So I definitely encourage your desire to want to audition and to be a greater part of audio theater.
Sure, it builds integrity and it builds professionalism.
Well, Sean Reilly, I want to thank you for being on the show with me today. And to our listeners out there, if you would like to hear some of Sean's work, his most recent one, of course, being The Nightmare of Prince Prezelsky, and like to hear him as a narrator, please look to some of our media outlets on Facebook or YouTube. And of course, as always, you can visit our website at waobAudiotheatre.org. Sean, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you, Albert. Stay healthy.
Oh, I will do my very best. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us for this episode of The Table of Content. I hope you will join us for the next episode. Until then, be good, stay safe, peace.